Our computer is picking up a strange signal. Here, sir, you better take a look at it.
Hello listeners, and welcome to another episode of Life Through a Prism with your host Rob Tierney. And we're starting a new series on community attitudes in the sphere of disability. And so I was thinking, I really wanting to get different opinions and thoughts on this. So I've asked Merran to come back and join me in this discussion in this series. So welcome, Merran. It's lovely to have you back.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back.
What we're going to do is we're going to go over several community attitudes or myths about people with disability and the disability community. So, Merran, the first question that we're going to look at is, a person's disability defines who they are as an individual.
You know, that's a very odd way to determine it. If you are whatever kind of disability you have, is that saying to you and to the general public, the widest of the community, are you saying that this is what happens in all cases, or is there another way? My thinking about this, or I have been doing some thinking on this, is that it's a community's attitude. It says, are you a stereotype is another way. If one is like that, are we all like that?
Yes.
Of course, the answer is really no, but communities don't always think that way.
I'm asking you, did you find, as you were growing up and in your life, did society, did people, did groups of people, different groups of people, did you find define you who you were as an individual with a disability, or did they treat you as an individual?
That's an interesting one. Okay, during growing up and the times and things that I've done in my life, it's usually people are wanting to know if it does the same as somebody else does. Obviously not because we are individuals, but of course the communities don't always think that way. And to looking at it, I wish sometimes that they'd have thought of me first as who I am. And then I don't mean who I am in that sense. I mean I'm just a woman, not just a woman, but that's where you are. You're a woman first, or a child first, and what your disability doesn't really confine. It's part of what makes you an interesting person, I say. And that's my. But of course, I found that nearly everywhere I went, somebody always wants to know, can you do things without? I mean, it's all simple stuff. Can I do things or whatever? Yes, of course I can. Why? Because I've sort of learned, and sometimes it's simply by learning from the rest of the community, not necessarily the disability community either.
Okay.
So I think that's an interesting point to hang up on there too.
So have you found that one area of the community that may stereotype you as an individual than others, or did you find it was sort of very much similar across the board?
It's interesting. Sometimes if it's groups you are involved in and you've taken the time and the effort and everything else to become part of, because you want to do a bit more fitness or a bit more whatever, that's more likely, where sometimes there's these odd, curious ideas of stereotyping turn up. Sometimes for other people, it's what their parents taught and what they grew up with. Occasionally it was because they had other members of their family, and that often showed up things like, grandma didn't want to do such and such. So maybe you wouldn't want to do it either, without thinking that maybe I might, and that maybe I've already found out ways to do it. If they get attitudes and ideas about what people, even not necessarily the people they know either, are going to be doing within society, it's a bit what I would call a bit, well, low key in that there's a word I want there, but it's coming at the moment.
That's okay.
It's a bit more low key. In other words, they can't do half of what people, and they are terribly shocked sometimes to find out that people do it, actually do things, and I mean that gets to me a bit.
What have you found with media? Like you've done a bit of talking and stuff over the years in regards to guide dogs.
Oh yes, I've done
and
yes.
your 50-odd year experience. Have you seen that media, the way that it portrays somebody with a disability, has sort of taken up those stereotypes? Or, I mean, we know there is there's a statistic that I read that only 6% of actors and stuff that is shown on Australian television is people with disabilities. So do you think there's that misunderstanding, or there's a reluctance?
There is a reluctance. There is a misunderstanding. There is a misinterpretation of it too, and that's where the problems lie. Or at least it's partly where the problems lie. I'd say is because people that's the questions they ask. Sometimes they shouldn't be needing to ask them. So you're beginning to wonder: is it they're thinking because of the group they belong to? Is it they're thinking as an individual? But sometimes it is. And it's not what everybody else in that particular group of people might think. Can be, but sometimes it isn't. Now there's an interesting thought.
I know for me, because, I mean, I was sickly a lot as a child, so I was told, and I became disabled in my mid-teens, mid-teens, early 20s, with chronic fatigue syndrome, which caused me to be very tired all the time. Some people might, and not being able to do a lot, and some people might say, well, they might not define that as a disability because, okay, I mean, chronic fatigue syndrome at those times and to a bit today was considered the yuppie flu.
Yes.
And people that were sort of had it, you know, well, pull your socks up, get over it, you know, it's just a virus. But I found that even in medical environments, that there wasn't this recognition as, I mean, it's changed a bit now, but the recognition of, you know, that is actually something, it is a disability, really sort of affected how I saw myself, and because it's sort of like I was very unwell. You know, I would have episodes where I would sort of think things were sort of like fuzzy, and I wasn't really feeling that I was connected to where I was. But then trying to go into a gym or go and do something like that quote unquote normal people, well people, able-bodied people in inverted commas, and I think in hindsight, because my condition got worse, but as time has gone on, I had a relapse in my mid to 30s, which then caused permanent loss of movement in my legs. And it's sort of like I was trying to be normal because society, you know, the thought was, you know, as I've mentioned, like it's not real. So therefore I was trying, and it was my detriment. It took me a lot of years to realise for my detriment that I was being defined by society.
Yes.
That if, like a lot of illnesses, you cannot see from the outside. You don't know if someone has got a broken arm or whatever. You can see that there's something wrong with them, but something that can't be seen physically or symptoms are intermittent. It's sort of, even to a bit to this day, it's sort of like shapes who you are as an individual. And I know for going into, I've spoken about this, listeners, on another little podcast that I did, that even going into a shop and trying to deal with the day-to-day things of buying something over the counter, that you're looked down upon and like, okay, you may be in a wheelchair, but, you know, I cannot physically speak for myself, so someone's going to speak for me when I can. They don't look at me or speak. So there's that general, misconception, and I think times, I mean, we've had some reality TV shows where there've been people with disabilities on it, and things like that. But do you find, Merran, like just doing your everyday tasks, like I mentioned, going to the shop, going to the bank, just doing, what is basically everyday life, do you find that people just treat you as you are, especially if you've been going somewhere for quite a while, they get to know you?
If people have got to know me, and that mine, sometimes as far as that goes, living here, it's a number of years, and for a few cases, something like 20 or 30 years. That's usually a good place for me to be in, because I've often been with a few of the people who do know me very well, and somebody will, when I'm buying something, when I'm asking for something, they'll simply say to whoever's with me, and a few of my friends have been brave enough to say, "Well, you ask her then." I love that when it happens.
Yeah, I had a situation where I'd said to somebody, "Did you notice that when we went to the checkout, that the checkout person wasn't looking at you, or wasn't talking at me?"
Yeah.
And she said, "Yes." She said, "It's the first time I've noticed it, so I didn't say anything. I made them talk to you."
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
So, where do you think society is at the moment? And I mean, that's could do a few hundred hours on that.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of things in the news at the moment.
Oh yes.
With disabilities, with the NDIS, and just so much. It almost seems to be. It's like we're fighting up against a brick wall. I mean, I know you've said once that for so long we have had to adjust around society.
Yes.
Society should start to adjust around us.
Yeah, I think it's fair enough. I do.
Where do you think we are with that, Merran?
We've got a long way to go with it. We are making progress, but it doesn't look like a loss at the moment. Even silly questions people ask you sometimes is really, well, what am I doing living in my house on my own? Okay. Well, I'm living here because I want to, and I can do it.
So is that perception that you're not able to look after yourself because you have no sight?
Yeah, why not? And being a nuisance to the society because of that. But I'd also have people that have not necessarily been family members, but people who've known me for a very long time will say, "Well, I mean, your family ought to be proud of you for doing what you're doing, because you were doing it and you're doing it well, and you didn't back off and all the rest of it. You just got on with it." And yes, and that's the way I want people to see it. I can do it. If I'll ask if I'm wanting something done, and I'm unable to do it for myself. There's a few times, of course, that happens. But I'm beginning to wonder if it is one of the more hidden, what we would have called hidden disability. That is a difficult area. How can you explain that some of these things are neurological and there's nothing to see? But sometimes the cause of that, things do go wrong and things happen. And then people get the wrong idea and the wrong end of the stick.
And also too with trying to get help.
Oh God, yes.
Certain things that society or community or government departments or any department, anything, is that if you do not fit the box correctly, you do not, will try and squeeze you into that box. And so if our government rules say you must be X, Y, and Z, for that to equate to you having a disability.
Yeah, but you're OP and Q.
Yes.
So that's different.
Yeah, and so you are told, and I've experienced this myself, your condition doesn't exist.
Oh, yes.
You've not done enough to get better. And that is from places where you're going, and I'm very reluctant to ask for help. I'm getting better as I'm getting older, but that's another story of
it is
of the difficulty of trying to get that help. So finally, Merran, do you think what would be your ideal? I know we've talked this several times in previous podcasts, but first of all, where would you hope that community attitudes? How would you hope that they would change over time?
I think they would steadily change over time as more and more people became more and more aware, because there are more people with any disability out there now in the public places that wouldn't have been probably 20, 30, 40 years ago even. And that's not too far back. But because people are out more, are doing things more, or trying to do things more. But on the other, there is another side to that. And the unfortunate side to that is because of this particular disability. And it's not true, quite possibly, but that the things go wrong and they'll do things because that was a stereotype for that particular kind of disability. And most of those are the neurological types of disability where you see that. And heavens no, it's the same as everything else. We're individuals. We're not, as a group, there might be things that are common, but there's a hell of a lot of things that aren't.
Yes. And one thing that I've found is that, I went to one restaurant once to use the restroom, and they didn't have a disability.
Oh, well.
That's another subject.
It is another subject.
Disability thing, and the comment was, well, it wasn't used, so we took the disability when renovations were done previously, they were taken out.
Yes,
because
guess
they
what?
weren't
If you said the
being
store,
used.
I know, yep.
So, there's that society thing is that, well, the community attitude can be, well, we don't get as many people here that come to our building, come to our service, come to this, come to that. Why should we have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars for maybe one or two out of 100 to change something to accommodate them? My thought to that, and I'll just get your opinion on that, Merran, is that if you had places that were more accessibility, that the community did not define these things as one or two individuals, do you think that more people would go to those places because they would feel more confident and that they were needed and wanted?
Well, that's right. I mean, if you have more places that can service these needs, and they are natural needs, everybody needs them for one sort or another. If that was the case, then there wouldn't be such this problem of this is, I mean, if you whatever industry, whatever kind of restaurant, whatever you're in, and you find that there's probably only one or two people that probably would ever use that kind of facility. That is a bit that is a bit of an issue. But if you define it as being something that's part of a community and part of something that was valued by a community because it meant that people could do that with confidence, use the facilities with confidence, then it wouldn't be a problem. And anybody who did have a one or two people maybe, and that's very much a maybe. Well, that wouldn't be necessary because it's been covered by the community generally already, and it doesn't need any specific places. Anywhere like that.
Yep. And we're listeners. We've had Jacobs come along to give his thoughts on the idea.
He has.
So, just to finish off, Merran, what would you like to say or encourage the able-bodied community and the disability community? Any thoughts that you'd like to let? They're two separate questions. So
they are two separate questions.
They're two separate things. So to finish off, I'll give you the last word.
Okay. All right. Now for the community, the disability community, if it continues to become an open area that people can see what's going on, hear what's going on, and so that they don't have any particular fear of that, because some people do. That would be good. But also, as far as the able-bodied community, they need to be thinking about that once they've got to this stage, they won't have any need to ask the questions that they seem to want to ask these days, because what they see in front of them is something that they've already know, and it's something that's pretty much a regular event. I think all this cloak and dagger stuff is driving both groups apart. I always say, if we sort of marry them together, we'd have a much more smooth running community. I do believe.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So that is that for this episode, listeners. My final word is that I just hope that we can work together, and we just want to. We're human beings at the end of the day.
Here we are.
We are just a bit different abled than the able-bodied community. And, people with a disability have different gifts, talents, and insights that they want to be able to share, because they just want to be part of the community. So thank you again, listeners, for listening. Take care, and we'll be back with another community attitude down the track. So take care, listeners, and bye for now.